Hello everybody, welcome to the Leap Chat channel brought to you by the Leap for Lupus Awareness Campaign. I'm your host, Chandra Hightower. Hey guys, I'm tuning in today to talk about what lupus is. I've been talking a lot about it and it's only fitting that I tell you what it is, right? Lupus falls in a class of diseases called autoimmune disorders. Auto meaning self and immune meaning protection. What happens in a normal, healthy body is that the body creates proteins called antibodies. And these antibodies are designed to protect us from foreign invaders, if you will, such as viruses, infections, bacteria, things of that nature. In lupus, what happens is the body does create the antibodies to ward off the antigens. However, the immune system begins to get confused, if you will, and it starts to make what's called auto antibodies. So it makes antibodies against its own self. The body can no longer tell the difference between its own cells and tissues and that of the outside or whatever's affecting it. This process causes inflammation, pain, which all inflammation means heat. Some of the characteristics of inflammation is swelling and redness, and if it's too severe, it can lead to, this is what leads to the possible damage to the organs and the breakdown of the bodily functions of the organ systems. There are several types of lupus, but the two major ones are systemic, meaning the body's systems, the internal organs and bodily systems, and discoid, which involves the skin. And sometimes lupus is diagnosed and paired with whatever bodily organs that it's affecting, such as if it's affecting the kidneys, they may call it lupus nephritis. Nephritis means inflammation of the kidneys. I have the systemic disorder, which is the more serious disorder. It is possible for a person to have both discoid and systemic, but it's not very, very common. And those with discoid lupus can still have the pain and the fatigue that goes along with the systemic disorder. No one knows how you get lupus. There is scientific research pending on the role that genetics and the environment plays, in addition to stress and hormones and things of that nature. But the major risk factors are if you're a female, if you are African American or any minority, and if you are between the ages of 15 and 44, which is what they consider childbearing years. It doesn't mean that you will get it, but you're at a higher risk than someone else. It does affect Caucasian women. It affects men and children as well. It cannot be prevented. It cannot be prevented just as any other disease cannot be prevented. But preventive measures can be taken, such as, eating right, exercising, that kind of thing. Anything you would do to prevent or attempt to prevent any other ailment. Diagnosing lupus is very difficult, and part of the reason why is because no two people with lupus are alike. For instance, someone may have experienced kidney failure or anything like that. Well, I don't have that. It's possible that it could progress to that, but we both still have the systemic disorder. The American College of Rheumatology, the ACR, in 1982 put out a publication indicating the 11 symptoms that that you can have. If you have, I believe, 4 of the 11, there's 11, it's possible that you may have lupus. There's no one test in order to diagnose lupus, which is why developing a medical history is very important. You don't have to have all of the symptoms at the same time. You don't have to have them concurrently. You don't have to, how can I say this? They could be intermittent. For instance, if let's say you have the rash, which is one of the 11 symptoms. Well, you may have that off and on, but that can still be an indication if you have 3 or 4 of the other factors. One of the other indications is if you have chronic symptoms. Chronic usually means that something that has occurred over an extended period of time, usually a 6-month period. So a 3 to 6 month period would be considered chronic. For instance, if you're experiencing fatigue and it continues on and with no explanation or anything like that, that would be an indication, again, if you have some of these other factors. It is very difficult to diagnose, and it usually takes a long time. It took more than 2 years for them to diagnose me. For some people, it takes much longer. You want to pay attention and try to seek treatment and try to, I guess, catch it early, if you will. It doesn't mean that it will prevent the disease. It doesn't mean it will prevent it from progressing, but at least at some point you will know what you have and then they can treat it. Lupus is often mistaken for other diseases as well, such as chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, all these kinds of things. And so you have to go through a process. It's a process in order to reach that final diagnosis. You can still have some of these other diseases. They're called connective tissue disorders, and they are called, they can be secondary to lupus, and they can run concurrently. So that is very possible, and it's very possible that they can be independent from each other as well. So, for instance, lupus is what they call an ebb and flow disease, means that you go through periods of remission and flare. Your lupus itself can be in remission, but if you have some of these other disorders concurrently, you can have symptoms from them. Lupus is currently managed or mainly managed through medications, mainly through the use of corticosteroids such as prednisone and other immunosuppressants like Cellcept, Imuran, cytotoxin, and also with the treatment of Plaquenil, which is actually an anti-malaria drug. Currently, there are only 3 approved medications, which include aspirin, prednisone, and Plaquenil. So these other medications that they use to treat it are not specifically approved to treat lupus, but they are used to help manage it. The inflammation can get so out of control that you could possibly die, okay? Because your body will not, the immune system does not know how to shut off. Sometimes it's irreparable damage. Sometimes it cannot be reversed, and that's even if you stop the medication at some point. There is currently no cure for lupus, but as I stated earlier, total remission is possible, but the incidence of another flare is highly likely. It can go into remission on its own. It can go into remission with the use of medications, but you would need a very powerful dose. You would have to go through a pretty aggressive treatment program with the use of medications in order to suppress your immune system enough to where the lupus becomes totally inactive. It's just a very difficult and mysterious illness, but there's pending scientific research on how to find a cure, in addition to finding ways to more effectively treated through medications and to get those approved. It's one thing to develop the medications or the elixir or whatever for a cure, but it has to pass federal regulations. I don't know if I've run over my time. I only get 10 minutes. I tried to be as concise as possible. But if you have any questions, get back to me, email me, and I will do my best to address them for you. Until next time, leap for lupus.